Alright, so just went through a run with Anivia with this build, but let's do a champion breakdown and look at other options for her. First of all, when we're looking at her constellation, things to note when you're building her, she has from her 2-star +1 starting mana, and if you're enlightened, when you would gain a mana gem, instead you gain +1/+1 for all your allies. This is your allies on the board. It's not for your entire deck. It's not everywhere. So just be aware of that. But enlightened is when you're at 10 max mana. So basically you're at max mana. If you would gain a mana gem, you instead get +1/+1. Her 3-star gives you play an elemental spell or skill, grants you an empty mana gem. It's a better version of her 1-star, which gives you the mana gem, a temporary mana gem, next round. This will, if you're at 10 mana gems, this will still, the following round, give your whole board +1/+1. But getting to 3-star, vast improvement over the 1-star, so definitely try to get her to at least there. Her 4-star, quite good on her. Allies that survive damage get +1/+1. You do have some skills in your deck and spells and such that, or not, yeah, actually both spells and skills that deal damage to your entire board. One of them, once you're enlightened, it doesn't, but yeah, this is still worthwhile to make sure that your board stays alive and stays healthy. So yeah, I would take that. Then game start, get a mana gem. Also, just, standard 5-star, but really important on her because you want to get as enlightened as early as possible. Her 6-star is good, but I don't think it's at all necessary on her. She's plenty strong without it. It will make your deck a bit more defensive in that when enemies attack, it just automatically frostbites the strongest attackers. So because you're trying to scale up to 10 mana gems, if you need to survive a bit longer and the enemy has more turns to attack in, this helps keep you alive and prevent that from causing issues. So then enemies also with 0 power take double damage. So if you're frostbiting their board, you can make them take more damage from your spells and skills, and attacking in. If you force them to block you or anything like that, you can remove their board a lot easier. But overall, I don't have this. I don't think it's necessary. I'm not investing to try to get that on her. I think she's perfectly fine without it. Only things to really note on her bonus stars, I would say, are the Star of Legends, which gives your supporting champions frost armor. This just makes them so they're a little bit tougher and they don't take damage from your allied spells or skills. As we mentioned, with the 4-star, you do have some things in your deck that do that, so this is nice to keep your champions healthy. Then the Star of Discovery, your 6+ cost followers that you acquire in adventures have Iceborne. This is a elemental skill, so when you play them, it'll deal 2 damage to all the enemies on the enemy nexus. Quite good for just making sure that you're either, if you're at enlightened, you're getting more bonuses, giving your whole board +1/+1, or helping you keep their board clear when you're dropping big units. Oftentimes this is the only unit you're playing in the turn, and so this just helps you keep that tempo by removing a lot of threats from their board by doing a lot of damage to them. So that is nice. I will now take a look at her relics. A couple different things you can go after. This build was primarily focused around just getting her mana gems early on, so that you can both get her on the board and you can start triggering Chemtech Duplicator as soon as possible. This, with this, you will effectively start with 4 mana gems rather than 3. And then, because I have her 5-star, starting at 3 mana gems there. So then, if I cast an elemental spell or skill on the first turn, that means I will be up to 6 on the second turn. I can drop Anivia and already start leveraging Chemtech Duplicator as soon as I'm able to cast more spells and get those doubled. Every time an elemental spell gets doubled, I will get 2 mana gems instead of 1 mana gem, potentially giving me +2/+2 instead of +1/+1. So really strong on that side. She has other things you can do. You don't need to start with the plus mana gem. I just think this is, one of the strongest ways to get her out early. But if you don't have that, you can focus more on either spells, or you can do some like spell damage things and whatnot. She has this effect: when you attack, you deal 1 damage to all enemies. If you're using stuff like big guns or Ludens, and potentially multiple of these, you can, now this would deal 3 damage to all enemies and the enemy nexus when you're attacking in. Also, when you're using the, 6 costs, if you have that bonus star, when you drop them, rather than doing 2 damage to the enemy board and nexus, it'll do 4 damage to the enemy board and nexus. So I would say that's really strong for like mid-level adventures. Once you get to the higher, 6.5 star or other things where creatures potentially have, 10 or 20 health, then it becomes a little less viable. It's not really removing their board. You tend to want to like frostbite them more and stuff like that. But for mid-level adventures, this can be very strong for just continuously keeping their board clear. You do have other spells and skills in your starting deck, such as this does, Frostspike's play 1. It basically does the same as Anivia's thing, but when you play it, it deals 1 damage to all enemies in the enemy nexus. Scale that up. You can put the, big guns and Ludens. Will make this 3 damage to all of them, and it's a 4 cost, so pretty good. Dropping this guy deals 2 damage to all other units. If you scale that up, you can get, 4 damage to all other units with those two, either 2 Ludens or the big guns. Keep in mind, if you don't have an Anivia out, then Ludens doesn't do anything for you, but big guns will give you the bonus even if you don't have Anivia out, so just keep that in mind. Other thing to note, Harsh Winds is in her deck. It is also her champion spell, so you can build things with this just to make this cheaper and be able to cast more. She only has 2 starting spells, which is a little bit of a problem. You do, and they're pretty expensive. So this is 5 cost elemental spell, and this is a 13 cost elemental spell. It does get reduced cost for each elemental spell or skill that you've played during the game, but yeah, you definitely will have a harder time casting this or the other one, and it's you ideally want to draft some lower cost elemental spells so that you can cast those early on and get her mana gems quickly. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to go all the way back there. Now let's take a look at what other things we can do with the spells, though. You may have seen before in other build videos, when a champion's spell is also part of their deck, Echoing Spirit can be quite nice. Especially if you're using combination with Searing Brilliance. This means if you hit the spell with Searing Brilliance, so you get that Harsh Winds with Searing Brilliance, then that'll give it reduced 1 cost, and if you have Anivia on the board and you have other copies of Anivia in your hand, it'll also, those champion versions of it will have reduced cost. So this will go down to 3 cost. So 3 cost, being able to frostbite 2 enemies, and you will draw 2 cards from it, and it'll, sort of cycle into your deck. You can effectively frostbite their whole board with this. Very strong. And if you're using Chemtech Duplicator, if you're doing this, you probably don't need Chemtech Duplicator. Honestly, just because you're going to keep drawing these things. And if you do it with Chemtech Duplicator, you're going to draw 4 cards every time, so you're really going to fill your deck a bit much. You might want to ditch Searing Brilliance or something like that if you're doing both of these. Otherwise, you're going to overdraw a whole lot. So you probably don't want these 2 together, just one or the other, and you'll be fine. But yeah, that's a way you can frostbite a lot of their board, especially if you have her 6-star. The frostbite, everything with 0 power takes double damage. So that'll be quite strong if you do have that 6-star. Other things with her sort of spells and whatnot, you can use this Death's Foil if you want to be able to attack in with her. I'm generally not too worried about it, just because she does have, when she dies, she becomes the egg, and the egg will still have her stuff equipped, so like Chemtech Duplicator and whatnot, so it can still trigger your doubling. And as long as you get up to 10 mana gems, she'll just respawn out of the egg each turn. So I don't think this is particularly necessary, but sometimes early on it is nice to be able to attack in. Disciple of Shadows to get Anivia out on the board is okay. Typically you should be able to cast other elemental spells and skills and get to 6 mana gems pretty quickly. So I wouldn't say this is strictly amazing, but yeah. One thing I'm actually not sure if I didn't look at it. I wonder, does Tibbers? Yeah, Tibbers, this is an elemental skill. So there is the possibility of putting Tibbers in your deck. And this just gives you another creature that when you drop it, it will trigger an elemental spell, and plus it's a 4-cost 10/10. So not too bad, just another way to get more elemental stuff in your deck. But I wouldn't say particularly amazing, but it is decent. Found Fortune can also be good when you drop Anivia. So once you're at 6 mana gems, the next thing below is either, you'd either get this Harsh Winds or Crystalline Storm Raptor. So either one of these are elemental stuff, so you could drop that for free. You get another mana gem. If it's Harsh Winds and you have Chemtech Duplicator, you can even double it. So, you would get 2 mana gems out of it right away the turn you drop Anivia. So Found Fortune going to be a good option for you if you are trying to scale up quickly with that. You can always use Frozen Tomb as well. That way you could potentially end up with multiple Anivias on the board. And also, again, with Chemtech Duplicator, if you have 2 Anivias with 2 Chemtech Duplicators, very strong. Other ways to sort of duplicate Anivia, as you've seen, she has that egg. So if you have the Guardian Angel, you can potentially put multiple of these on her, as well as Chemtech. So if you do something like this, you can get a lot of doubling going on. So you basically can fill your board with Anivias or Anivia's eggs, and either way they'll have these Chemtech Duplicators. And then you cast an elemental spell and it'll just buff up your entire deck. This can be quite strong. You can also use, like we were talking about, the Frozen Tomb, just to make sure that you get her on the board, and then you can play her before the Frozen Tomb pops, have multiple. There's a couple different ways to sort of print her out and have more than one of her on the board and get more triggers of this Chemtech Duplicator. The Hidden Tome, also going to be decent. I know I was... sorry, I'll continue with this and then I'll go to the Icon of All here. When you play or level up a champion, you get the spell mana. So just playing her out, being able to play more elemental stuff early on. Decent. I wouldn't say it's amazing. I think, Chemtech Duplicator is certainly way better, but this is a decent way to be able to cast more spells. When we were talking about like big guns and Ludens and whatnot, you can also use Icon of All here because you're trying to play elemental spells and skills. Having them deal 2 extra damage, this is great. This effectively is, on its own, like having both big guns and Ludens. So if you do this plus big guns or something, you can even do more damage. So yeah, just be aware of that. Very, very good. Definitely better than big guns strictly for her if you're trying to go for more of a spell-based build or spell damage-based build. You can do things where you're trying to cheat her out early, try to get her out turn 1 using, Packed Powder, Swain's Relic, And Scourge Stash. This is always an option to try to get her out early. That way you can attack in with her, get more mana gems, things like that. I wouldn't say this is particularly strong again because you'd have to sacrifice a Chemtech Duplicator to get that, and I think Chemtech Duplicator is probably best in slot for her. But if you are trying to do other things, that is a possibility. On the Epic Relic side, I don't think there's too much else. Overwhelm is always good for any champion that is scaling a lot of stats. Of course, once we hit, 10 mana gems, we're just getting a bunch of, +1/+1 for our whole board for every mana gem that we're generating. So being able to overwhelm and attack in will help you close out games. So always a good option if you're looking for a source of overwhelm. Similar to Troll King's Crown or Cruel Experiments. Especially Cruel Experiments can be perfectly fine for her because if you have her 4-star, you also, when you take that 1 damage, it gives your board +1/+, or any unit that takes damage and survives it gets the +1/+1. So this effectively is free. You get a source of overwhelm, and you get the impact as an extra bonus. So this might be strictly better for her if you have her 4-star than the Beast Within. But yeah, you can use this, Beast Within, or Troll King's Crown. Easy ways to get overwhelm for your board and be able to crush them that way. Archangel Staff, you're trying to cast elemental spells and skills, so this will be good to have mana, be able to cast those. Decently strong. Again, Chemtech Duplicator we've already talked about, probably best in slot for her. I don't believe there's any elemental spells like this Falling Comment. This is Celestial, not Elemental, so you won't get any mana gems from this. I don't think there's any elemental spells or skills specifically you can add to your deck from this. This Redoubled Valor, also not elemental. So nothing really there that you can add, but you can get more bonuses from more spell stuff. Grand General's Counter Plan can be good. This, if you have her on the board, you're always guaranteed to every turn have an elemental spell in your hand, and it's an elemental spell that will shuffle her back into your deck, and it'll draw a card. So you can have more copies of her. Quite strong to have this. Again, especially with Chemtech Duplicator, then you get multiple mana gems out of that every turn. Really strong. Highly recommend this as well if you are not using any epic relics or anything like that. This is a great option for you. On the green relic side, really not that much that's amazing for her. Spell Shield's always nice, just to make sure that she's staying alive. It's harder for them to remove her. Lost Chapter for mana to be able to cast more elemental spells and skills. Always good. I wouldn't focus on any specific combat relics for her. I don't think any of those are particularly amazing. I think it's more about her spells and skills and getting those going, as well as potentially trying to get multiple of her or other things on the board that will allow you to trigger more mana gems being generated. So that's about it for Anivia. Really strong champ for scaling and sort of getting a large board, as well as having plenty of mana to be able to cast things from your hand. So recommend trying her out. If you have other builds or things that you are interested in or know about with her, let me know. And if there's any other champs you want to see a breakdown of, also let me know, and I will try to cover them in a future video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.